Don't get hung up on words, because they can change words, and that confuses folk till it throws them right off. You're looking at the same thing, but you'll never really apply it to what it was applied to before. Oh yeah, I recognise that. It reminds me of Theo Adorno. He talks about eradicating completely Western values and culture. How it would have to be done for a healthy world. Completely. How do you destroy healthy values? What do you introduce to replace those values? Well, unhealthy ones. And you want society getting right. What makes a society complete? It's not a matter of do you like it or not. What makes it function and strong? They had a family unit where families had to take care of their own. You do away with that by encouraging promiscuity and non-marriage. So the state ends up taxing more people to pay for the unwanted. And then you bring in abortion clinics and you pay for that too. And then you don't have folk getting married at all and reproducing. And then you introduce new kinds of families and so on. This is war scenarios, you see. That's what you use for war. But you must get the folk to like what you're doing. And it's quite easy to get youngsters to like whatever they're, especially when it's the candy at the checkout counter. I used to give the talks on all that, how the psychology was used. It's admitted, and you've probably come to the conclusion without having to be told, why are all the candies that you see in a store, even general stores and grocery stores, all the candies are at the checkout counter? And all generally from the shoulder level downwards for different levels. It's so the children can grab them without restriction. There's nothing separating the child from the candy. Their arms just go out, boom, and oh, I want that. Mum or dad says, well, you can't have that right now, and then the child puts on a streaming match. It's all psychology. If you've ever studied the people who do the Bernays techniques, that's where a lot of behaviorism came from, was all these techniques that have been practiced before even Bernays came along. He inherited a lot of the knowledge. How do you make people buy? Well, psychology. If you're in a line at a checkout counter, you feel embarrassed if there's a queue behind you and you're holding it up. You feel guilty. Guilt is an incredible persuader. That's why they use it now against COVID, you see. Guilt. They actually have it in their manuals in the PSYOP operations right now. And I really mean that. I've got them here. Use guilt as a weapon to make folk to comply, you see. They got it from that checkout counter idea where mum or dad feels embarrassed and she's got her groceries all sitting there and here's the people behind them going, oh, he's a screaming child and she'll pay it, you see, and okay. So naturally the child's going to do it every time it's there. It worked, right? And that's why it's there. Well, if you want to destroy society and culture, and like they said in the Communist Manifesto, the end of the family unit, said the same thing too by Albert Pike at one point. He was talking about the end, because he belonged to the World Revolutionary Party, and he talked about ending the family unit, but private property for most people. I say most. It's very important, that little word, the most. And how do you destroy the family? Well, you create promiscuity. How do you also do what Julian Huxley said? We'd have to knock humans off their pedestal as being a superior creature on the planet and bring them down to the level of animals. Well, you've got to take away the sacredness of human life. Understand that? So you start getting rid of your own human life before it's born, and then folk accept that part of. Now you end up in the elderly. Now we've got euthanasia for them now. Well, what's next? Well, guess what? What's your oh, I see you're non-essential here. How old are you? It doesn't matter your age anymore. You're just non-essential. Back to Bertrand Russell, useless eater, right? So the checkout counter for teenagers, quite easy to do. How do you create mass promiscuity? Knowing they'll never bond with a person for long is almost impossible after a time. And then you promote it as normal culture. When it becomes normal, everybody's doing it. That's what they said to do. And H.G. Wells talked about it too. Different techniques to get folk to practice promiscuity to end marriage. He belonged in the late 1800s, H.G. Wells. That's why they picked him up initially and used him as a frontman for free love. He's writing about free love in the late 1800s. Well, as a consequence to free love, there was no welfare system there, folks, and so on and so on. You create promiscuity. Every teenager's got their hormones jumping. Nature wants to have its way, you know. Like the child in the checkout counter and his all candy. You tell them to go ahead and do it all. Through media, mainly through television at the time, leading up into it in the 1950s, but 1960s, away you go. Give them the pop music, tell them it's their generation and no one can hold them back. Give them the music, give them the Bob Dylans. There's going to be a revolution and so on. And tell the parents, don't stand in the doorway, don't stand in the hall. And for the times they are changing. Mother and father are throughout the land, don't tell them to stand in the way of their children. That didn't come from little Bob Dylan. The beauty of reality is most folk don't know that what they're living through isn't reality. It's a plan. As I've said before, from Plato's time on, anything to do with culture, music, plays and so on had to be vetted by the establishment. And Plato talked about it. Plato wanted even musicians to be licensed as well as the actors. I think they already did with a lot of the acting troops and so on that did their rounds through all the Grecian islands and all that. This same authorised plays. They knew how you could upturn society, overthrow it through a revolution by using music, for instance. Works every time. But the last folk that know it are the ones who are living through it in every generation. Quite something, eh? You were the child in the candy store, out came the miniskirts. Even in winter, for goodness. In cold countries, these women shivering, wearing plastic skirts and plastic jackets and plastic boots. H.G. Wells also said, as he's promoting World War I, as a propagandist for the British establishment, he said the same thing about getting all the women into the munitions factories and all the other factories as the men are off fighting and getting killed and so on. And he said they're more prone then to have affairs with men at work because of being in close proximity with them. Even if their husbands come back from war, they can stay in these factories. This was the whole idea of getting women out to work, apart from doubling the tax base, which for the establishment, which of course it was too. It was also, he said that if 8 hours at work with other men is more than they'll have at home with their own husband in the evening, at least awake. He says affairs will take place, and that will also help to dissolve the family unit marriage as well. Nothing happens by itself. All authorised from the top. Oh, if nothing was authorised from the top, you'd have seen kings and queens and all the big figures at the top come out speaking against it. None of them did. That gives you another clue it was all authorised, you see. You're living through amazing agendas and most folk have no idea. They have no idea at all. Under the guise of crisis, war scenarios, they can ram through all the changes which they cannot do under peacetime situations. That's what Quigley also said. I've said it so many times, as Brian Rope basically said the same thing. He says, you get more done in 5 years of war, because the government takes over all resources, thoughts, propaganda, everything, and the people have to obey to survive. That's what they're taught. You have to obey us to survive. So you can ram through all kinds of social changes, and that's the whole idea, social changes, you see, in 5 years of war, where it's hard to do even 50 years of peace and propaganda. That's why they're using COVID right now to restructure the whole society and the world, and you're all being trained at every possible step as to your own place in this society now, and you've yet to experience, by the way, because they're going to get worse before they get better, you might say. And I mean by forcing things upon the public. They've already got the techniques for stigmatization of segments of society who won't go along with what's happening. You demonize them. And when you demonize people to the rest of society under this kind of terror system, and folk are being terrorized by the incredible daily propaganda that's deliberately spouted out there, and exaggerated, by the way. And then you'll see the weird things happening within. And you'll also see the players in society that are put out by the authorities to give you halfway, almost fictitious representations of people who are protesting something. The CIA is part of the real deep state that runs the world. Part of it. There's no agency that cannot be part of it. The very fact they're not against each other tells you they're all one, you see. They're all one, you see.